Hey, real quick, before we dive into today's episode, if you've been feeling like your brand needs a little love, but you're not quite sure where to start, I have just the tool you need. The Standout Brand Audit Bot is an AI-powered guided audit that shows you exactly what's working, what's not, and how to strengthen your brand using my proven Standout brand system. In 10 minutes or less, you'll walk away with clear next steps to move your brand forward with purpose. It's completely free. Just head to the show notes to grab the link and get started. Did you know that you can hire somebody to help you name your business or your offers or your freebies or your digital products? Yeah, me neither. And it blew my mind whenever I learned that naming is a whole entire industry that exists. That's why I'm so excited to introduce you today to Katie Pannell. She is a naming expert and founder of 26 and Then Some, where big names are built letter by letter. Katie has named brands, bands, beauty lines, and baby products, and that's just her B-list. She's also the creator of the Name-O-Matic, the only AI naming tool with taste, designed for entrepreneurs who are still waiting for genius to strike in the shower. When she's not working, you can find her manning the merch table at her rockstar husband's shows and fending off the AARP crowd from asking him to sign their body parts, which is unfortunately not a joke. If you have struggled with what to name your business, what to name your offers, and I bet that at some point you have, you are going to absolutely love this episode. Welcome to the Six Figure Brand Podcast, where each week we're pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to build a six-figure business as an online service provider. I'm your host, Morgan. I'm a branding expert, online agency owner, mom of two, and military spouse, and I'm obsessed with helping entrepreneurs like you understand the ins and outs of branding so that you can use it to grow your business without sacrificing your sanity. Whether you're just starting out or focused on scaling, we're diving into everything you need to build a profitable and sustainable online business. Let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Six Figure Brand. I am super duper excited to have my friend Katie here. She is a naming strategist behind 26 and Then Some, which I think is the most fun business name I've probably ever heard. So excited to have you here, Katie. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you and everyone listening about naming.
Yeah, so I only learned less than a year ago that naming was a thing I could pay someone to help me with, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit. And then shortly after that, I was introduced to you by a mutual friend. But let's start by telling us a little bit about just how you got into online business in the first place. Like, what were you doing before? What led you here? How did you land on naming as the thing that you wanted to help people with?
Yeah, it was kind of a long way around. I went around my elbow to get to my thumb, as they say. I started as a copywriter. I was working in a marketing agency, and I had lots of different side hustles. I was helping out with children's performing arts. I was doing princess parties on the side. And at all of my little performing jobs, I almost had a degree in musical theater and changed my mind. So I still was performing on the side. And part of my little scheme, so to speak, is I would tell the people that I worked for that I could also do their marketing, because I was actively getting a degree in PR. And so I was doing PR and marketing, and I just did it for all these companies that I was working for. And then I left there, was at a marketing agency. And at the marketing agency, I just kind of was a jack of all trades. I was doing everything, and then eventually got into copywriting. And after I got into copywriting, I did that for like 9 years. And at that point, people were commenting on the names that I had for things, because I didn't just name things the way, we're taught, quote unquote, in the online space to name things. My names stood out. They were different. They were unique. And my copywriting clients started asking me okay, well, if you're writing my sales page, can you maybe toss out some other names that you think would be better for this offer? And I started to notice that there were more and more people that were asking about naming, and it was such an underserved niche. And still to this day, my competitors are the giant naming corporations, not corporations, but agencies, firms that are charging, they're branding agencies, and they're charging, 5 figures for the exact same thing that I'm doing. So I just kind of niched down from copywriting directly into naming.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it gets tricky, right? Because I get clients who ask me to help them name things, and I'm like, no, that's not it is a brand strategy adjacent, but that's not what I do. And so then I'll try and pull in somebody if that's something they want to spend money on. But I think a lot of times people think it should just be included under the branding umbrella, kind of like you said, and they don't realize that that's a whole separate skill set.
Yeah. And I think people also think it should be something they could do themselves. They think, oh, I should just be able to come up with this, or I'll just use my own name. But that's not the most strategic choice.
Yeah. So that actually is the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because that's a question that I see brought up a lot of like, do I pick like a cutesy name for my business, or do I name it just my name? I have not really done both, but I started out as Morgan Stapp Design, which was my maiden name, and then got married and was like, oh my gosh, I hate this. It doesn't fit anymore. And then transitioned to Spect & Co. And my strategy behind that was like, I still want it to be my name and feel personal because people are hiring me. And I want to like give myself some room for growth. So it doesn't have to be just me in the business all the time. And I think that was a fine decision. Like, I'm still happy with it, but knowing what I know now, like if I were to ever think about selling my business or anything like that, like it does make things a little trickier, but now I've built all this brand equity in Spect & Co,
right?
Which again is fine, but like had I known then what I know now, I might have gone a different route. So talk to us about using your name for your business versus choosing a name.
Yeah. I mean, nothing that you did was wrong. I just want to say that. Everyone thinks it's so easy to just use their personal name first. I did it. You did it. Everybody did it. I mean, it's just the easiest thing. You're building a personal brand. This is the decade of personal brands. However, you already said it. When you're thinking about scaling something to the point where you could sell it one day, you probably want a name that isn't tied to your personal name. I mean, this is an entire podcast episode we could do on just personal names versus brand names. But I always say it comes down to a few big things. And the first being the scalability of it. Are you comfortable with someone else signing emails on your behalf, or as, Team Katie or whatever? Or do you want them to work for you under your business name? So scalability, sellability is the second one. And then the next one is SEO. And this one's always kind of funny because you never know who out there has your exact same name. So, I mean, you could be competing SEO wise against a lawyer, a doctor, somebody else entirely, but also mugshots, obituaries. Like, there are so many other reasons why you need to be able to differentiate yourself, and you can still be the face of your brand having a separate business name. I'm 26 and then some, but everyone knows it's just me. I'm the only one who works here, but that may not always be the case.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that of like the SEO piece, because when you first said that, I was like, oh yeah, like you want to make sure you name your business something that people are searching. And that's totally not where you went with that. But
true.
Yes, also true. I have a friend, Angelica, if you're listening, sorry for like putting you on blast here, but her name is Angelica Ross. She's a fabulous copywriter if anyone's looking for copywriters. There is also an Angelica Ross who's a drag queen, like a fairly famous one. And so it makes things a little bit tricky. Like even I will like just be too lazy to type in her like website URL directly. So I'll just Google her name and she's not the first thing that comes up. And every time I'm like, oh, dang it.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know. I mean, Googling your own name might feel a little like weird and self-absorbed, but it's probably a good idea before you like fully run with that for your business.
Yeah. I have a friend who is building her brand on her personal name because she's an artist. So she wants to be the face of her brand, but she actually, I think it's genius. And I've told this story before, but so if she's listening, I still think it's the greatest thing ever. She paid people to write blogs about her upcoming album and her singles because there was a contestant on My 600-Pound Life with the exact same name. So she wanted people to be able to find her as a musician. And so she did what she had to do. And I think it's great. She got lots of reviews out there, lots of blogs about her music. So she's not the 600-pound contestant that comes out first.
And I think that's a really good point too, of like, if it's your name or if it's another business name that like you feel really passionate about, there are ways to make it work. Like if somebody else owns the trademark, you could approach them and ask to buy it, or you could do what your friend did and like feed the internet with the type of content that you want it to see. Like, we're not here to say, oh no, never use your business name or never do this or never do that. I think there's a lot of nuance, but if you have something you're super married to, like it might take some work to make that make sense and like work for your business.
Yeah. And the other thing too, I mean, and this is really just personal choice, but we're seeing a trend where everybody wants to be more offline. They don't want to be consistently on, like people say, the best content is like just documenting. Well, for those of us like me, I don't want to document my everyday life. Like I want to have a business, not be the business. Mm-hmm. And so having a business name really does separate. I call it separation of self and service.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And same thing for me as well. Like I will share like little bits and pieces of my life. And that is the stuff, fortunately or unfortunately, that I feel like gets the most engagement. Like My husband's in the military. We just had a big air show at the base near us and went to that. And so many people were like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. But I also don't want to put my kids' faces online.
Absolutely.
And so it just gets tricky there, where for me, to be clear, like I don't do that on my personal page either, but it definitely makes it easier to, like, for example, have, your business and yourself, your business page and your personal page. Maybe it's more work or whatever, but from like where we're waking up a little bit to what should be online in our lives and what should not be online, I think having more separation is probably a smart move, and having a business name that is not your name is a really good way to do that.
Yeah, I think it gives you kind of office hours, like from the hours of whatever you choose. This is a business space. We're going to operate as such.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even like I keep bringing up Instagram, but like I don't post on my business page on the weekends. I'll engage there like a little bit, maybe if I feel like it, but not really. But I'm still on my personal page, checking out like what my personal friends are up to. And that also helps me to like scratch that social itch without feeling like my entire social life is like tied to my business. So I don't know. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I do think it's related to naming, just in like creating some separation for yourself mentally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if someone is like, okay, not going to name my business Morgan Stapp Design because that doesn't have a lot of longevity, where is a good place for somebody to start when they're brainstorming?
That's a great question.
Their business.
So there are a few ways that I like to approach this. You can think about an outcome or result-driven name. You can think about something that speaks to your client's inner dialogue. You can think about what differentiates you, something that inspires you, something that you really love. I mean, in some ways, it's no different than naming like a pet or a child. You're like, what am I drawn to? Start there. I would definitely start there. If you think about maybe there's a theme. Themes are also a really big thing right now. I'm sure you see that all the time with like branding. If it's something relating to your personality. Now, I will say the caveat here is if it's something you pick just because you love it and it doesn't have a direct tie or a through line to your messaging or to your business, you might want to make one. Like the number of times, and I think I said this on Amy's podcast too, the number of times I see like a beverage based business, I'm like, we all are hydrated. Like we know.
We all like coffee.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be your whole personality.
Doesn't have to. Yeah, exactly. So like if it is going to be something that's thematic, make sure it relates to your messaging and what you actually do. My business is all about letters. 26 and then some is based on the letters that make up every single name ever. So, I mean, do I think like my brand has a lot of like primary colors and very basic with like ABCs, but that doesn't mean I'm like obsessed with the alphabet. It's just, that's the name, that's the theme, that's what I'm sticking with. That's what I've made my conventions revolve around.
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring up a good point about like the story piece of it. I talk with clients a lot about this when it comes to their logo design. People get really like precious about their logos and they want like the best logo ever. And I'm like, honestly, like it's not even the most important part of your brand. You're probably going to use your logo the least often of any of your brand elements, but it's important to people and I get it. So I always ask them like, is there something symbolic or meaningful that you want to incorporate? And the reason why I do that is because people are going to ask you, why is there a blank in your logo? What's the story behind it? Same thing with your name, right? How often, Katie, do people ask you, where did the name 26 and then some come from?
Right. Not very often. And that's something like I have conviction around it. I love it. I think it's so fun. I love being able to talk about it, but it's the foot in the door. It's not supposed to explain everything I do. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, did you start it when you were 26 years old? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point that like, it is a good conversation starter, but like, just like how we put too much pressure on our logo to like be everything for our visuals, I think sometimes we can put too much pressure on a name and like overthink it a little. And then it kind of holds us back, right? Because we're like, oh,
Absolutely.
I can't launch this thing until I have the perfect name. I can't start my business till I have the perfect name. You can change your name. I would maybe not get like 20 years down the road into business and then try and change your name. That's a pretty big shift. But what would you say to somebody who's like agonizing over, oh my gosh, I can't do this thing because I don't have like the 10 out of 10 stars perfect name?
I think it all comes back to your energy. I know that sounds so woo, but I mean, it really is about the conviction behind it. If you can say it without like having to feel defensive, then it's a good name. Like there are so many different things that make up a good name. What makes it, you know, sometimes I like to, I mean, this is different with every client, of course, but generally speaking, It should be easy to pronounce. Spelling is also kind of irrelevant these days. I mean, if you butcher it, typo, we'll fix it. Google will figure it out. So like even some of that's kind of irrelevant. Domains are irrelevant. But I mean, I do think in general, it comes down to you having conviction around it. Like if you can say it and feel proud of it, you're going to put it on merch, you're going to wear it, you're going to put it on whatever, on your mug, it's going to be on your story, it's going to be on your desk, it's going to be on your contracts. If you have conviction, it's a good name. And that really is like, I mean, I'm shooting myself in the foot just saying that because like there's so many other things depending on the client too, what makes it a good name versus not a good name. But the biggest thing is the energy behind it. And if you have the ick from your own name, it's time to change it.
Is your brand feeling a little off? Like your visuals, messaging, and your overall vibe just are not lining up with where your business is headed? You probably don't need another pretty logo. You actually need a solid strategy behind your brand. That's exactly what we'll build together inside the Standout Brand Strategy session, a one-on-one deep dive into your brand foundation so that you can finally show up with clarity, consistency, and confidence. And if you're thinking about working with Spect & Co. on branding or web design, this is your first step for every single project that we do together. Clients who have gone through this process have tripled their audience size, doubled their revenue, and raised their rates by 30% or more. Use the link in the show notes to book your session, and don't forget to enter code SFBPOD at checkout to save $100. Yeah, which is what I tell people about their visuals and their marketing strategy also. Like if you're like, oh, I really don't want to send somebody to my website, or like, oh, I haven't posted on Instagram in 3 weeks because I hate my visuals, like maybe change it up a little. You bring up a really good point, though, about like kind of your gut feeling. And I have heard you answer this question on another podcast, so I know what your answer is going to be, but I want everyone here to hear it. What is, like when you present names to somebody, a client, what's the first thing that you have them do to like filter out which ones are maybe winners and which ones are not?
Great. I was hoping we would talk about this because I love this. Well, the first thing I do when I start working with a client is we define the criteria from the get-go. We're not going into it blind. I'm not just tossing names, tossing like spaghetti at the wall, so they say. I am literally going into it with the exact approved criteria based on their messaging, their positioning, what they want the name to do. So we have that as our first line of defense, quote unquote. So when I'm presenting a name to the client, I already know that most of the names in that presentation deck adhere to the criteria that we've already established. I say most because, of course, I do throw out some wild cards because I can't help myself. But the first thing I do is I present the names, and then once I've presented, I turn off screen sharing. I'm like, nope, it's gone, retracted, you can't see anymore. I don't allow them to take notes while we're on the presentation. I always say like hands where I can see them because I want them to be able to recall which ones stood out to them. So the first thing I ask them is which names do you remember? And I set a timer. And then they tell me which names they remember. And then from there, based on the ones they remember, we go back, we take a peek at the other ones they may have forgotten. We figure out why they may have forgotten them. That was early on in the presentation. I remembered the rest after that, or whatever that may be. And then I have them mock introduce themselves using that name. So they would say like, hey, I'm Katie. I'm the founder of blank, and this is what we do. So it's really interesting, and I always watch their facial expressions to see if they're like smiling or if they're kind of nervous or if their eyebrows are arching, and all of those little micro expressions tell me whether or not that name is like actually gonna work.
Yeah, I remember I was on Sarah's podcast that I heard that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's like the smartest thing ever. I think when I first learned that naming was a thing, one of my questions I had, or where I was like, oh man, how does that work, is that it's so subjective, right? Like, and I thought the person who I met that was a naming expert, I was like, don't you like run into a lot of issues where somebody hires you and pays you all this money, and then at the end of it, they're like, well, we don't like any of these names, like give us our money back, kind of a thing? And when you explained it that way of like, okay, no, we have, you know, our 5 criteria that we're trying to adhere to, and then like this, there's like a very concrete process that you go through, is when it finally clicked for me of like, okay, this is why you pay somebody for this.
Oh yeah. I mean, the biggest thing, of course, everyone wants to hire a naming expert because we're creative thinkers, we're lateral thinkers. Like we're not just connecting point A to point B. We're taking the scenic route. We're exploring everything that could be out there. But the bigger things that people don't realize is it's really about us being able to sell you on having the conviction. I don't present names without presenting rationale behind them. I'm never just going to say, okay, well, here's your list of names. Yeah. What do you think? Like every single name is a pitch. I am pitching. I mean, that's why I tell people in these presentations, like the first 25 minutes, I'm just monologuing. Like you just sit back and enjoy, and then we'll see what you remember, because I have to give them a brand story. It's not fun for someone to be like, I paid this girl and she came up with a name. Yeah. What's that? I mean, that's not fun.
I could have asked ChatGPT, right? So this is a little bit of a tangent, probably not really. But you mentioned when you were telling your story of how you got into online business about like doing princess parties and some like performing arts stuff for kids.
Yeah.
How does that background play into what you do now? Because I can kind of see how it does. And I'm curious if anyone in the audience is like picking up on that also.
I think it's 1, improv. I think it's 2, character work. You have to get completely immersed in the role that you're playing. So I'm immersing myself in the business when I'm thinking of like what this could look like. How does this shape the experience that the other customers are having? And then 2, it's improv. It's thinking on your feet. When I was doing princess parties, I did this for going on 3 years, I guess, in college. And it was so much fun. It really was so fun. Without fail, there's a kid, sticky fingered, yanking on my wig, asking me questions about Arendelle or, you know, what the children are up to. My favorite was when I did Mary Poppins, and I would have to use an accent, and they would ask me how to spell supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and like spell it backwards. I had to be prepared to do all of those things. And so in a way, naming is the same kind of exercise, because you do have to think on your feet. If I'm searching for a name that I'm so excited about, I think it's perfect, and then I find that it's already taken or it's already trademarked, or somebody has the domain and it looks like they've started an Instagram but they're not using it yet, like that's dead in the water. I'm not using that. So I have to think on my feet and think, okay, well, what else? What else could I explore? What else could I extract? Like it's all character work. And I think having a background in like any sort of performance role or theater is really helpful with that. I mean, same thing with copywriting. I mean, it's like getting into somebody else's voice. Like you're literally putting on someone else's shoes, and you have to be able to sell that with conviction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a big like people aspect to it, obviously, right? Like you're choosing a name that hopefully is going to resonate with your client's audience, but you are also having to, like you said, like you pay attention to their facial expressions whenever they're like reviewing their names and all of that stuff. And I think a lot of that is a little bit of like a lost art now that we're like so online and so disconnected from each other that we have forgotten what it's like to like feel the energy in the room whenever you pitch the perfect name.
Yeah. The energy and the emotions, and being able to like really harness those emotions.
And I see this whenever I like deliver somebody's final brand files and they're just like stoked to do all the things with their marketing now. But like how much of a fire that can light under somebody for their business that maybe they have kind of fizzled out on, and they're, you know, going through a rebrand and they're like, okay, this is like my last chance. I really hope that this like takes off now. And it can really change the trajectory of someone's business.
Yeah. It's kind of like putting on the costume. It's like, okay, getting into my character now. And it's, I mean, I think I saw online that you're also a Swiftie, but when Taylor talks about putting on that bodysuit and she's like, okay, it's game time. Like I'm ready to go. Putting on the right name is that same energy. It's like, oh yeah, this feels good.
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that. I was a Swiftie in her like 15-year-old country music days. And then I kind of got away from it. I have like, please, Swifties, do not come for me. I have no hate for Taylor Swift, but just like wasn't really into it. My daughter is 3 and she has drank the Kool-Aid. I let her listen to like one Taylor Swift song, and now every time so I'm getting on board. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I did just watch your reel that you posted today.
Yeah.
Where you were talking about like the way that she approaches words in her songs and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But I can appreciate, and I actually, this is not so much related to naming, but it is related to like language, have observed about myself over the last 6 months or so, that the music artists that I really like enjoy and resonate with and want to like listen to over and over again, it's because they're like talking about stuff that I think is smart, or like I like the way that they put their words together, which has been an interesting revelation. Because like you said, it's the same with choosing a business name, like something people are going to remember, that they're going to get curious about, and with also like your overall messaging. But enough about Taylor Swift. Okay, so we've talked a lot about naming your business, which is a huge deal and is like, feels really high stakes. to people and they really want to get it right. I think something that gets forgotten about maybe is naming your offers. And for a long time, I was in the camp of like, don't get cute with it. Just call it what it is. People just want to know what they're getting. So just call it that and keep it simple. And I've started to sort of shift my thinking. Like I named my newsletter recently, actually, as a result of listening to that podcast episode that you were on. So thank you for that.
Love it. You're welcome.
But there's a balance, I think, between like getting too cute that people are like, okay, but like, what is this? And also picking a name that's like memorable and stands out. So can you talk us through kind of your philosophy around like offer naming?
Yeah. So offer naming can be kind of tricky because you can take so many different directions with it. So let me use the example of a brand strategy session. Everybody sells a brand strategy session. You can be a designer, you can be a copywriter, you can be a coach, you can be a naming person. Like literally anybody can sell a brand strategy session. But when you just call it a brand strategy session, all you're doing is labeling it. You're not naming it. That has nothing. Yeah. That says nothing about your position or your.
I will tell you from experience, nobody wants to pay for a brand strategy session.
Yeah, because we're just like inundated with them. And it's like, well, what is it? Tell me what we're doing. Like there's nothing to grasp onto to even be more curious about. So the same is true when you're thinking about like naming your freebie and you use like guide, checklist, worksheet. All of those things are really just labels. They're not names. And that's the biggest misconception is like, if you just call it what it is, you're not doing yourself any favors. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about offer names, I like to think about a few different things. If it's a new offer, you have to think about how primed and ready are your people to receive this? Like, what is their perception going to be? Because the name, whether we want to admit it or not, people are already making assumptions about the value based on the name and based on their own perception and experiences. So if I see brand strategy session and that's the quote unquote name, like I could think, okay, well, this is either going to be super, super cheap and not worth it or really, really expensive. And I don't really know. Like, but there's nothing for me to experience or like dive into to latch onto. So I like to think about like what it is they're buying. You could, like I said before, you can sell it based on the outcome. You could sell it on the speed. You can sell it on the depth. You could sell it on a framework. All of these are things, or like a pain point or a result that you want them to have, like the promise. All of those are good places to start when it comes to offer names. But I also want to think about the familiarity of the audience, what the price point is, because sometimes like expensive pricing can work either way when it comes to naming. You can name it something super unique and super compelling, very clever. It has a high offer price point, or your super, super high thing can have the simplest name ever because that price point already determines the exclusivity of it. And names can do that too. So it's really buyer's choice at that point.
What are your thoughts about naming your offers like around a theme in your business?
I love it. I think that's the easiest thing to do if you already have an established brand theme. For example, my brand of letters and alphabet, I have capital letters, which is my signature offer, and I have 2 tiers of that. And the tiers are even IDK or TBD in capital letters because that's the start of something significant, a name, a proper noun. So that kind of is self-explanatory. Then I have a red letter day. Well, we know just because red letter day is an existing idiom, it's an expression people are familiar with, it means something momentous. That's my VIP day. Then I have letter grades, all with this letter theme. And letter grades is a name analysis where I'm giving you an objective pass or fail based on what your letter grade is. So that's the easiest way to name because so many people, it's counterintuitive. And I think you've probably experienced this with branding as well. We think if we just don't have too many guardrails, then like anything's up for grabs. And that's going to be you can have so much more fun. You can be so much more creative. It's actually the exact opposite of that. It helps to have some sort of boundary because you can get so much more creative within those boundaries. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I have talked about this in a different way on a previous podcast episode of like, I'm a terrible artist, but I'm a great designer. And that's the reason why, because like art in quotes is like too open-ended for me. Like you just do whatever. There's no purpose. Design, someone comes to me and says, okay, I need to accomplish this, this, and this. Here's like where the thing is going or how big it needs to be. And then it becomes almost more of like a puzzle for me to solve. And I think that's the same thing with naming your offers. My personal hang up with the like themed naming is I think when there's not a purpose behind the theme, right? So like I have a client who is an email marketer for pet businesses. So all of her offers are like animal themed and it's great. But I have also seen, and I'm harping on the coffee thing, and I'm sorry for anyone that's like a coffee fanatic here. But where people are like, oh, I just like drink a latte every day. So now my entire offer is going to be like cappuccino and Americano and blah, 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 whatever. And I'm like, that one is not creative. Two, does not tell me anything at all about what the service is. And so I feel like it can water things down a little bit if it's not done correctly. So that would be my like brand strategy advice is like go for the theme, but make sure there's a purpose behind your theme. Your letter theme makes total sense for your brand and like who you are and what the thing that you do is. But if you had like a under the sea theme, right, I would be like, okay, I'm not so sure about this.
Right.
Katie.
Yeah. It needs to be somewhat intuitive. Like when you hear letter grade, it does make sense that it's an audit or like an analysis. You're like, yeah, like there's going to be a pass or fail to this.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing because like I was saying with the labeling, if it's just like a guide, a checklist or whatever, naming your offers for like a flavor or something is the same thing. Like it's no different than like labeling a tier and that just becomes a label. It's really not a name.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's human nature that we go with like and plus what we're taught in online business. I mean, if you're new to online business and you've taken any of those like giant courses, they're going to say, oh, go for the clear name, just like pick a name and move on, like as if it will hold you back. But I promise you, if you go with a more fun one, it's memorable because not everyone's doing it. I mean, I'm making it my personal mission that everyone starts doing it, but they're not right now. So it's a gold
There's still some
mine.
work to be done there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to your point about the strategy session. So when I started pulling out the brand strategy session from like my overall brand process, I was like, oh yeah, pay me. I think at the time it was like $600 for a brand strategy intensive. People don't want to do that. Like that sounds hard and like a lot of work and not fun. And like, why would I pay for that when I could just go to somebody who will let me jump straight to the design piece? So I started listening to like what people tell me they want when they come to me for branding. And 95% of them were like, I just really want something that like helps me stand out. So now it's the standout brand strategy session. And frankly, like I think it could be a little better, a little more creative, but people know now immediately when they like get to the top of the sales page what the benefit is, like why they would do this. And that has helped a lot. It also helps because like from an ownership perspective of like, I feel like I have this thing that is mine and nobody does it the way that I do, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think back to your point about like energy, I think that is really valuable, right? Like when we get to say, oh no, the only place that you can get the standout brand strategy session is with me. You can get brand strategy anywhere, but this is like my version of it, gives us a lot more like ownership and kind of a place to plant our flag, which I love.
And it even sounds more intentional. And that's the other thing too that people miss is like sometimes if the name is what's holding you back, picking a name will automatically elevate the thing that you're trying to do just because you've given it something to call it what it like to just call it something. Like it makes it more significant and more intentional just because you've decided this is worthy of a name. Like you literally, to use an example that is like not great, but still, you're not going to leave the hospital with no name for your baby. Like I know people
some of
do
us
it.
get close.
I know some people do it and they get really close, but like that adds so much more pressure because like you have to take it home. You have to launch the thing. Like you have the idea, you're excited about it. Yep. If you don't name it anything, like naming is a sign of respect. It's like,
you don't call your dog.
Some people do, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even to the point of like it adding value, even if it's just perceived value. Like for example, Nike doesn't sell shoes. They sell Air Jordans or like, you know, whatever, Nike Frees. Each of their lines has a name and that's the thing that people pay for. They're not paying $160 for sneakers. They're paying for the brand and the name. And those things are so closely intertwined that I feel like if you care about branding, you should also care about naming.
Yeah. I mean, it really does make the thing a thing. You can't refer to it. You can't talk about it. You can't share it. You can't do anything if it's just untitled or if it's like your placeholder name. And then people get stuck with the placeholder name for so long and they're so embarrassed of it. And then it becomes a whole headache to change it. Like if you just put a little intentionality into it the first time, then you can build equity on a name you're actually proud of.
Yeah. And to our point that we talked about earlier, then you don't get down the road and like, oh, you just pick some name willy-nilly and now you want to trademark it, or you want to sell your business, or you want to do this or that. And then you find out, oh, actually, like, I can't, and now I have to change everything. And my business name is in 85,000 places, and it's this huge feat that feels so overwhelming.
Yeah, one of my clients was trying to franchise her business. And at that point, she discovered she couldn't actually use the name. Yeah.
That's rough. And that's like a really expensive mistake also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to the branding point, can you talk us through how somebody having or having not worked on their brand strategy before they come to you makes a difference? Like if somebody is like, hey, I'm a web designer and like I kind of have an idea of my ideal client and like here's the services I provide and that's it, versus somebody that's like, okay, here's like my brand strategy brief. Please help me choose a name. What kind of difference is there?
You can tell a huge difference in just the preparedness. Like if they've worked on their brand strategy and they know it like the back of their hand, they are much more capable of making a final decision. That's a big one. Mm-hmm. They feel so much clearer in setting the criteria because they already have. I mean, in a way, your brand strategy is your criteria for how your business is going to run. Mm-hmm. So you really are just solidifying that into what it's going to mean for your name. That's another way. And then I guess the biggest one is the brief is usually much more detailed. So there's more for me to pull from. Mm-hmm. That's also very helpful. It's also more helpful that they can make a decision faster, and that they can decide what the naming criteria is going to be. But especially with your point about the audience, if they know they know their audience very well and they have like detailed client avatars or something, at that point, I can pull more inspiration from that just to be able to speak to their pain points or what they're looking for, especially if they're wanting like a result-based name or an outcome or some sort of brand promise type of name. And also with the clients that don't really have their brand strategy nailed down, another huge issue that we've run into in the past with clients is they think they're naming for the thing they present to me, but they're not thinking about where the brand's going to be 5, 10, 15 years from now. And I know that's so hard to think about when you're working on something that it's exciting right now and you really are all jazzed about this one thing. But I think I've given this example before too. I had a client who was in the self-tanning space. So all the names they presented fit the criteria that we'd established for self-tanning. And it wasn't until the presentation they were like, wait, I think one day we might want to launch swimwear. And I'm like, well, that changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I talk a lot about building your forever brand. And that's something that I talk with people a lot about during their strategy session is like, okay, where are we going? Because if we build your brand, or in your case, we name your business or your offer or whatever for who you are and where your business is today, then hopefully if things are going well, in 6 months, you're going to have outgrown it already. Like we need to build for where you're going, not where you are. And I think the only way to really have a clear picture of that is to do the brand strategy work ahead of time. Like you said, like it's hard. And no, you can't predict where you're going to be in 10 years from now, but you can give yourself like a ballpark idea of where you hope to go. And then you build with that in mind, which hopefully gets you closer.
Yeah. I mean, 26 and then some, when I started 26, I was still offering copywriting as one of my services. And the reason for the name at that point is because I was so tired of people saying copywriting, like law, legal things, trademarks. And I would say no with a W and 25 other letters. And that was kind of like my punchline. And I was like, oh man, 26 and then some, like that's such a great brand name. And I was offering naming at the time as well. And I thought, okay, well, like this fits. And then when I niched completely into naming, all I had to do was change my tagline. Like it wasn't a massive shift. It was still the same letters make up either copy or names. And that was intentional.
Yeah. Which is such a big help for things like brand equity and trust and recognition. Like if you had changed your name entirely, it wouldn't have like broke your business. You wouldn't have been starting over, but there would have been some friction there. You would have had to announce like, hey, this old business name is now 26 and then some. And like, here's why, and tell the whole story. I've seen that done well. Usually I see it in the instance where like somebody was operating under their name and then now they've decided to maybe like grow into an agency and then they come up with a business name and they rebrand. And that I think is mostly okay because you get to approach it from like oh my gosh, so exciting. We're growing. This is why I'm doing this. And people are like pumped for you. But when you change from some like random business name that you thought was like the street you lived on or whatever, and you thought was cute, and then now you want to switch to something more intentional, and there's not that like growth arc to share behind it, it makes things feel a little disjointed. And I think the part that people in your audience will not tell you is that they question, like, what's going on here? Like, are things not going well? Is that why you're rebranding? The example I think of is our cable company changes its name like every 6 years after they build up like so much bad equity with their customers. Then they're like, oh no, we're a new business. And they're not. It's just that they're trying to like shed that skin. And I think that you run the risk of people thinking that with your brand if you are constantly rebranding, constantly changing your name. So that's why it's so important to get both of those things as right as possible the first time. You're never going to be perfect. It's always going to be a work in progress.
Yeah. And I do think there are good steps that you can take if you are changing your name, and it's not because of bad PR. And that's something I do with my clients is I always give them a name drop doc. So this is a new thing I started offering this year. And I basically just kind of outline what the name is, why I picked it, how they can adapt that rationale to fit their brand narrative, and then how they can answer questions like, well, why did you change your name? What does it mean? Where did this come from? So they can kind of take ownership of it themselves. But also because it is important, people are going to be asking questions. You don't want them to assume it's bad PR or whatever that may be. So there are steps that you can take to roll it out correctly so people don't panic. And I always tell people, like, the first thing you should do, you need to notify your internal people first, your team, or, you know, whoever's working for you, your accountants, your legal stuff first. Get that taken care of. Then tell your customers and your clients first. If it's going to change on their invoice, or they might see it on their bank statement and think like, what is this? Like, they could dispute it, and you don't want that. Yeah. So you need to just take the steps first before you just randomly announce it. I can't stand when I get the email from a big company and it's like, we changed our name. And I'm like, what? Like, they're like,
or they don't like, I think the other thing too is like sending one email. If it's a personal email, like if I'm writing like Morgan to Katie, that's one thing. But like one blast to your email list is not enough. Like you have to assume, I mean, people know what their open rates are. Like half the people aren't going to read that. And then they're going to get their second email from this new company and they're going to be like, I never subscribed to this. And they're going to unsubscribe. And that is I think, very frustrating.
Yeah, I think there should be at least some sort of mini sequence involved, at least a couple touch points. I need to know something is changing. I need to know when something is changing, why something is changing, then tell me about the thing. Then maybe you can do a smaller sequence around how you arrived at that decision. There was a big company, one of my favorite, I've probably talked about this as well, but there's a meditation app that I love. And it used to be called Superhuman, which is a great, objectively great name. It made me feel like a superhuman to meditate with this app. And then they changed their name to just Activations. And I'm so bummed about it because I'm like, Activations sounds like the thing I'm doing, like the action, not the result. And I just think it's such a downgrade. But the name Activations changed on my app before I got the email saying we're changing our name. So I was like, what is this? I didn't download this.
Yeah, who hacked my phone? Yeah, so I think like being intentional with the way that you roll out, and I love, by the way, that you call it a name drop doc. That's another great example of not really offer naming, but like naming things in your business that make sense and make people excited about them. Like they're so happy to get this cool new thing that's going to help them make their rollout of their new name easier. But I think doing that with intention is so important, and also like give your audience the opportunity to be excited. I have a friend who recently, I did not mention her by name, but changed from her name to like agency name for her social media management agency. And she did a whole like rebrand launch and like a scavenger hunt on her website. She did an amazing job. And people were like, I could not believe the engagement that she was getting on all of her posts around that. And they were so excited about her. And what a way to capitalize on making a change in your business versus just being like, oh, by the way, I changed my name.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was launching 26 and then some, I was just Katie Pannell before, like, yep, Katie Pannell copywriting. When I was launching 26, I did a 26-day launch backwards, and my Instagram started with Z, Y, X, and I did the whole lead up all the way. And it was so fun. And I did have a lot of engagement because it was an intentional choice to then make the name make sense. And I think that's the other thing too. So many people think they're going to go just with the clear thing. It's going to make so much sense immediately, but there's always additional context, and having the context of, well, this is weird. She's building the alphabet. Like, what's that about? And then I launched 26 and everything is letters and it's all cute. And they're like, oh, and like, it just, everything connected without me having to explicitly say it. And that's what makes it a good name.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, one of the big things that I talk about of why brand strategy is so important is because it makes all the other contractors that work in your business, their lives so much easier and so much more effective. And I think that you've done a great job of explaining kind of how that works. With naming, what about visuals? Like, do you usually see people tying a name change to a rebrand?
Yes.
Do you think that's the best way to do it? Or do you think it's fine to like change your name and not change any of your visuals?
I think it's just more exciting. If you're going to change your name, it feels like for whatever reason, if it is bad PR or if it's just because you're scaling and growing and you're not just you operating as a solo business owner anymore, I think it's a great opportunity to have fun and actually get to do the full rebrand. If you want to change your name, that's one thing. Like, sure, go for it. I mean, I think that's more common with offer names. If you've changed your offer, maybe you've beefed it up a bit or scaled it back. I mean, sure, change the name. But most of the time, people are coming to me for full rebrands. And I will say a lot of the time, the name does I have a graphic on my website that I think does a better job explaining than I can audibly, verbally with this. But the name sometimes can like act as like that cube or that prism. When light hits it, that everything else comes out Technicolor. That's what the graphic is on my website. It's like a prism. And I think a lot of times the name can inform what your visual choices are going to be.
Yeah. 100% agree. And I would say too, to anyone listening who's like, oh, I kind of want to rebrand, or maybe I want to rename, and like, now I want to work with Morgan and Katie, and how do I do this? When you can tell me if you agree with this or not, I would say your best bet is to do your brand strategy and then choose your name and then do your visuals. Because if you think of a name like 26 and then some, or I don't know, like there's some reason why like olives make it into your brand name or whatever, then like that's a really easy jumping off point for us visually. And we're not having to try to like shoehorn a name into visuals that have already been created. So that's the like sequence in which I would approach those things.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. It's like just figuring out, like you said, starting with the brand strategy first. The more solid you are in your messaging and positioning, the easier it is to articulate what you're looking for in a name and the tonality that you're looking for. I mean, if you're somebody that's using, I'm just going to say it, if you're using AI for every piece of your content, for all of your copy, like that tone is not your own, girlfriend. Like you've got to figure out what your actual tone is, because that informs your name as well. I mean, my tone when I'm writing, I'm dry, witty, sarcastic, like irreverent. Those, I would never pick a name that's like, I'm trying to think of like a funky naming agency name. Like I wouldn't pick something that's like bubbly or cutesy or like girly pop. Like that's not me. Like it's just never going to be me. So that is important to know.
And I always use the example of, I think brand voice plays a lot into what name you choose. And so are you the like soccer mom who's working during nap time, and like, not that this is just a side hustle, but that you really have like built your business to like support your life? Or are you, I'm harping on like the kids thing here and it's not really that important, but are you like the like strong single female who's like, I'm never having kids and I'm like, you know, super edgy and I like swear in my content all the time or whatever? You, as a naming expert, would not present any of the same names to those two people, even though they might offer the exact same service.
Absolutely. Yeah. And having that brand strategy and your tonality and your voice and all that dialed in that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Katie. Can you tell us before we wrap up how somebody can hire you if they're like, oh crap, I've been doing this wrong the whole time, please help?
Well, there are lots of options. I have a custom GPT that'll help you with names, or if you're AI averse, I also have analog intelligence, AI, get it? Wink, wink. That is exercises for naming by hand, not by machine. So those are some DIY resources. And then all of my done for you, done with you, or just a name decision helper is on my website on 26.
Awesome. And where is the best place to connect with you on social media?
Probably Threads, although I would say my email list, ... is the best place, because I'm a huge fan of the brick and I'm bricked like 90% of the time.
We need to do like a brand case study on the brick, but that's a whole nother episode.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, all the links will be in the show notes. Definitely get on Katie's email list. If you need help with naming, just reach out to her. Like, I wish I had known 8 years ago when I started my business that this was something I could pay somebody to help me with. It would have saved me a lot of headache and honestly probably would have made things feel successful more quickly. So big fan of getting support in this area. Thank you so much for your time, Katie.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Six Figure Brand Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to rate the show and leave a review on whatever app you're listening on. And as a thank you, I'll send you coffee on me. Yes, I'm serious. As a smaller show for now, you taking the time to do this makes a huge impact on how we can reach more people and how I can continue to create this content for free. When you take a screenshot of your review, follow and tag me on Instagram at @SpectandCo. I'll send you a $5 Starbucks gift card. As always, don't forget to check out the show notes for any links or resources I mentioned during the episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week.